everybody's out there. Welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals.
Awesome, Kevin. This is great.
It's time to be here. So yeah, welcome aboard. You are Pastor Brian. How do you pronounce your last name? Massman?
Massman.
Massman. Okay.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, the church that you're at, what Tri-State Community Church?
Yeah, I'm with Tri-State Community Church in Dubuque, Iowa. Have a couple of co-pastors. We just had ordained someone we ordained from within. And we just had an ordination here a few weeks back. And so there's 3 of us now. And I was ordained back in 2008, like I said, and yeah.
So you were ordained back in 2008. So are you affiliated with anybody in particular, like your church, SBC, IFCA, something like that?
We were affiliated with something called Great Commission Churches, which had since closed up. Okay. And just a couple of years back, and they're reorganizing now with, and then some are joining it and some aren't. They're, trying to figure that out right now. So we are, running independently, and then we also, interface with other churches as well. Yeah.
So I think people might be interested in how you and I came to start talking.
Yeah.
And what interests me about you is that people ask me all the time, hey, how do I find a good church? And I don't know what to tell them.
Right.
And I used to be a pastor myself. And when it comes to how to do a brick and mortar ministry, like on site with real life people, well, I mean, they're real life people, but on site, not remotely. I've been trying to wrestle with that myself on if I want to do that or how I would go about doing that. So you are doing that, but you're trying to incorporate some of the things that you've heard on this channel.
Yeah.
So talk me through like what your game plan is, what your vision is, and how that's going, and how you see that.
Well, I was hoping to get a game plan from you. No. Okay. So as you know, I was off from pastoring for about a year, and I had reached out to you on Facebook, which I'm a selfish user of social media. I really don't like it, and I just used it to try to reach you. And because you had some thoughts that were simultaneously swimming around in my head, and I could see that you were much further along in them. And I thought, I need to talk to this guy. And then of course you typically can never talk to those guys, right? That you want to talk to. And I had Facebooked you, and you responded, and I was like, this is awesome. And then we had a long talk during my sabbatical, which
we had a little chat on the phone.
Really thankful for. And so hey, thank you for being part of my journey here. And so I have just been back pastoring. I was off from July to July. It was intended to be a brief sabbatical.
Yeah.
To get my head, heart, everything back together. And my issues were much deeper than I realized.
So I'm wondering how much, I don't know how much you want to get into that, but it is very curious.
I will go any way that you want to go with this, but I may be protecting a lot of people I love. You know how that is, right?
Yeah.
I will go down any path you want to go.
Yeah. I want to know, like, this sabbatical, was it the church's idea? Was it your idea? Or was it something that came up as an idea because of other things that were unfolding?
Yeah, my co-workers in the Lord were incredibly gracious. So I will just say that I had an unplanned implosion.
An unplanned implosion
of myself.
Of yourself.
And at times explosion. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Okay.
had developed increasing anger
Yeah.
in, and it was, and I just, there was, I'm trying to think of the word that, somebody would come and counsel, you'd get counsel from you and you'd give them some counsel, right? Which would be like biblical counsel, but then inside, I wasn't equipped.
Yeah.
I had lost, uh, I had fell apart.
So you
In,
could, open up the Bible. Let me get my prop out here
yeah,
if I can. So you could open up the Bible and dish out prescriptively what somebody else should do, but you weren't internalizing it yourself.
yeah. I could talk pretty extensively about the grace of God with people, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what they should do. And the whole time, I was being consumed by anger and anger so and also anxiety, and it just kind of took me down.
Were
Like I
there
said,
any events like happening that were provoking this?
yeah, good question. I have had a number of things, significant family issues, and my significant issues with my wife, and just the general church pressure, right? Of
Yeah. Yeah.
just that comes at you from a lot of different angles. But as I began the healing process, which was a year, as I said, I realized that there was really one really root cause.
Mm-hmm.
There may be many, okay, but everything seemed to be boiling
Kind of like all
back.
roads lead to Rome kind of thing.
Yeah,
There was
and
something central to all this.
yes, and that was through. I was doing a couple of types of inner healing things. One is called transformation prayer ministry, and I don't know
Okay.
if you're familiar with that. It's
I'm
a
not.
series. It's a series of questions that leads to your heart. Okay,
Hmm.
that you present to the Lord, and then He deals with you there. So there are
Yeah.
lies that we have built up that we say about ourselves, and all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
we take it to God in a spiritual way, and we deal with those problems. Okay, so I
Mm-hmm.
was doing that, but then I also was doing something I was highly opposed to, which I was getting counseling. So
So you were highly opposed to that before?
I was I was I think people would be maybe surprised that I said that, because there was a local counselor that I always endorsed, but this pride thing, that says I can fight my way out of this, me and God, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And so that's what I was working on. I'm going to fight my way out. Well, I lost that battle, Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
But on the other side, I won a great deal, but the counseling, I'm still, I did that for a long time. I'm still doing it. So this was kind of interesting. Everything in this transformation prayer
Mm-hmm.
and everything in the counseling pointed back to my feelings of abandonment
Mm-hmm.
as a child,
Mm-hmm.
stemming from when my dad left us at a young age. Okay, so everything, no matter what it was.
What? Yeah. What? How old were you when that happened?
I was like in the third grade, so I
Okay.
was young. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty young. About 8, 7 or 8, 9,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was interesting. After a while, I kind of abandoned the TPM. I did get a lot of healing there, but then the counseling was actually really effective, and it was really outside of the realm of what I still can't. It's an interesting thing, Kevin. I know you talk about some of this stuff, but I can't. I can't proof text this counseling that I do. You know what I
Right.
mean, Kevin?
Right.
I can't.
We'll tell our ideologically possessed audience members to plug their ears
Yeah, yeah,
while
yeah,
you talk
exactly.
about
And
something
and
that
and
helped you.
and which is an interesting thing too, because like within the church and certainly within our church, there are many that are just very opposed to
Hmm.
counseling,
Hmm.
and I think of, when and
Basically, psychology is using man's reasoning to find excuses for your sin rather than dealing with it as sin. That's
oh,
kind of
Kevin, I remember in college when I first, was saved, and there was books out there like called Psycho Heresy, and it was just talking about the heresy
yeah,
associated, and I know there are some of that, right? But
right, right.
that's all I can tell you. I honestly can't. That's all I can tell you is my counselor, who was my local counselor, became my best friend.
Right. Yeah.
From the standpoint, my wife's my best friend, right? But from the
Yeah.
standpoint of, oh, dude, the healing was astounding. Was astounding, and now I'm different. So I remember on one of your and I forgot where this was. It might have been in the Mammon Church. You had alluded or were talking about. It seems like you're talking about it secondhand, maybe about how sometimes you're really hindered from walking apart from this healing. Do you remember where that discussion was?
Hindered from walking apart from
Yeah,
the
hindered
healing.
from really walking in a free way. I'm kind of killing it. I just looked this back, but it caught my attention, and
Yeah.
it caught my attention, and so it's kind of interesting because I'm preaching here next week, and I'm talking about uh, belief systems,
Yeah. Yeah.
obedience,
Uh-huh.
and their hindrances.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
So
you
like
can.
a belief system will stifle you
Right,
from
right,
growing.
right. And yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yet we put so much stock in our belief system. Well, just like this psychoheresy thing with
Yeah.
psychology,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
So it seemed like you were going to talk more about this counseling a second ago. You said
Yeah.
I can't proof
Okay.
text this, but, and then I think I derailed you.
Yeah. No, no. So I still don't know what to make of this other than that I'm greatly helped, but I'm just going to share the technique. Okay.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Um, Someplace along the way and first of all, I just want to say this. So my dad left, but I want to, maybe he watches this. He's a great man. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to, I want to
Right,
make
right.
it very clear that he stepped, his situation in his life was really, really, really hard. And he really didn't, it was really just the abandonment. I mean, he really made a great life for himself, a life of helping addicts. So I just want to make it very clear.
Yeah, you're
I
not
love him
trying to
dearly.
throw him under the bus or anything like that.
Yeah, no,
You're trying to
yeah.
talk
So I
about
just want to
you, and
make that,
he just happens to be a character in the story.
yeah. And so, but his departure, I realized I had internalized. And so we tell lies to ourselves, right? So one of the lies that I would tell to myself is that I am rejected, that I
Yeah.
am unloved. I am, so that story was in me. So that the whole time I have all of my theology, all of my belief systems that I have conjured up through my personal study and my association. I have all this stuff that I resort to, and this is how you do Christianity, right? Inside, I was pining away.
Right.
And the method with the counselor was,
so all that theology wasn't actually helping you or transforming you. Maybe there was something in there that could have, but for some reason you weren't tapping into it.
There was, I think, even some of the theology, like some of the theology is pretty basic, like the word and prayer and fellowship, good stuff, right?
Right.
But the pain was screaming so loud that, and it was, I didn't really, it wasn't top of mind. The pain wasn't top of mind, but it was deep in the heart. And so that's all I can say is I think God is gracious to cause this implosion and explosion in my life, because then it forced me to seek out the Lord in a different way. And you were part of that journey.
Wow. It's humbling.
So I will share with you what, and I don't, like I said, I don't understand all. It was, the counselor would have me visit my trauma.
Yep.
Okay. Visit there, and then we would invite Jesus there, but we would dwell in that trauma. And some of it wasn't just that, it was also some of my own sin, right? That was very traumatic and embarrassing. And I was like, as we were
revisit the scenario.
We would visit there. We would be there. We would dwell in it.
Where's this character? Where's this character? Where are you? Now let's bring Jesus in that room.
Yes. Yeah, right there. And what was surprising, and we did this with various things, and there's other techniques too, but this was a big thing for me. It started to exceed the TPM, the transformational prayer, which I don't, whatever way, I'm not going to dictate how somebody would get help, right? You know what I mean? I just know for me, this was working like way better. So I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I easily lose my train of thoughts. You might have to help me along today.
No, I'm very interested in this.
Thank you.
I've been reading about IFS, internal family systems, and
so
this kind of thing. Yeah.
And I'm again, shout out to Loie. I'll have to share this with her. But so gracious she was, and tough. And she was in the middle of this stuff. It was, a lot of it was really not attractive. But I was surprised, Kevin. I wanted to share this. Something that really surprised me as I started to delve into some things that were really not attractive about me. Things that it'd be the very last thing you'd want to tell anybody public. And I'm like, I'm going to bring this out in this session, because I was getting better and I really wanted to deal. I wanted to really get help. Right. And I remember asking her, do I got to tell you the specifics? No, she didn't need to know the specifics. But what was so awesome, Kevin, Jesus is so awesome, Kevin.
Yeah.
I know you know that. He was so gentle. So he was in these ugly scenarios with him. Obviously, it's sin. Obviously, he's holiness, right? And he just came.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
He came with such grace. So I'm I'm thankful. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for the implosion and the explosions. I'm thankful for my wife that endured. It was good. So if you need me to any questions you have to help fill in the pieces,
Well,
please do.
well, you're making great sense to me. I actually just recently had an experience similar to this myself, with which you might call a coach. My wife and I know somebody that we went to see, and we were doing different kinds of work, and I was visiting something from my past, and it was very intense, and it it'll disrupt your day when you
Yeah,
when you realize the impact. Like, you had no idea that this thing that bothered you 2 weeks ago really reaches back to this other scenario that was going on when you were
right.
12. Had no idea. And yeah, I just had an experience like that myself. So I read a lot about how this kind of stuff works, but never actually did it specifically that until just this week.
Awesome, Kevin.
Wow.
I'm glad you had a good, God's working with you there. I mean,
Oh yeah.
all of
Oh
this
yeah.
stuff is so good.
It is. It's very good. It's a little frightening too, because you can sense that something's real and something's helpful, and that you have this sense of I'm dealing with something that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah,
But it's also, you're in this liminal space where I don't have these cookie cutter Sunday school answers for exactly what's happening,
yeah.
but I know that it needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's kind of like how you would conduct yourself in high high current water, where you have to feel the flow of it and know how to go with it, and rather
Mm-hmm.
than struggle against it so that you don't die. And it's kind of hard to tell someone else. You can't reduce that to a set of beliefs or a set of
Right,
rules to
right.
follow. But you can feel it, and you can go with the
And
flow of it. So
and I was gonna, if I could, I bring up kind of something that's, I think, is interesting in this. So I found, okay, there always seems to be controversy, right, in Christianity, right? Controversy in the church.
yeah, yeah,
I found a lot of people very opposed to this healing thing. You know what I mean? Just healing either through transformation, prayer, or really all. And there's a lot of different techniques out there, healing through ministry. And they would, a narrative, a story that I've seen is put up like, well, I just need the Word of God. You know, I just need the Bible. But here's what's ironic is I have never more valued or been blessed by the Word of God, you know, to my core than I have been post some healing. I say post some healing. I think this healing is, I'm not done with this, right?
right.
You know what I mean? I won't be until I get a new body.
Some healing, yeah.
Right. Yeah, there'll be some. It'll be partial, but every word of God is flawless, you know, and I just am so much more. I mean, now,
Quoting Psalm 12:6 and 7 there, yeah.
and Psalm or Proverbs 32, right? Proverbs 30.
Verse 5 and 6.
Yeah,
And
and
the word of God, yeah.
I find myself now, and I'm so thankful for this. I'm reading the Word. I was just reading the Word the other day, and it was talking about just as Moses lifted up the snake in the desert, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in tears. I never would. I was just thinking about his resurrection, just worshiping the Lord, and I
Right.
was like, oh wow, this is so awesome.
And in ties to this, you know what? I don't have to defend my belief system anymore. I
Right.
can just enjoy the Word of God through the Spirit of God, and I don't have to put a definition on everything and wrap it all up in a nice package. And that was and I don't understand all of this yet, Kevin.
Right. Right.
I first discovered you in your videos on Calvinism. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure you have more than 4 of them.
Something like that.
How many do you have?
I'm sure it's at least 5. I think there might be more than 250 on Calvinism.
Yeah. So there's a lot of them, but you're an equal opportunity beater upper, meaning that you don't just pick on Calvinism, right? And I
Right.
kind of align myself with provisionism, and you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
that was Arminianism, that the opposite of Calvinism. No, it's not.
Right. Right.
So
The branch of it. Yeah.
that's been good. I don't have to tie into. I don't have to. I would rather tie into the God of wonders.
Right.
Than to have to. I don't have to subscribe to. Hey, I don't have to. I can
Right. You don't have
subscribe to God. I don't have to.
Yeah. Right. Because any model that you have of God isn't going to be God anyway. It would be idolatry if you thought it was.
Yeah.
Any model of the description of how God works would not be the way God works. That would be idolatry. And so if someone's going to have some kind of label like Calvinism or provisionism, I don't think it should be a label for the conclusions or propositions, but maybe a label for the process, perspective, and participation.
Yeah.
Something like that. Something about an ecology of practices that the person observes rather than a set of beliefs, a stagnant set of beliefs that they have emotionally identified with. There's no point to doing that unless you just don't want to grow ever.
Right.
And I'm not even talking about don't want to grow onto further, like more the possibility of more correct propositions, but propositions. I'm gonna get carried away now. It's you want to be you, and those propositions aren't you, and they are not you being. There's no well-being for you in those propositions. There's well-being for you without them. Anyway, that's so this whole, I know people want something to grasp onto. They want a label. Like, what do you call yourself? If you're not a Pelagian, you're not an Arminian, what are you?
Yeah.
I'm just a guy who's trying to be like Christ to the greatest degree that I can.
Right.
I don't know what you call that.
Yeah. And that's where, so my inroad was your teachings on Calvinism, but I've been most intrigued with these thoughts of ideological possession.
Ideological possession. And that, that language is borrowed from Jordan Peterson, but it's connected to a lot of other people too. Like if some people will say I'm a Gnostic if I mention Carl Jung's name.
Yes, Carl Jung.
But he's not the only one that said this. And I used to have another quotation to fend off the Gnostic accusers. But anyway, the idea is that people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. Idea has you. So a person is like soil that an idea can come live in. And you can either let it live in you, or you can take charge of your own sense making and not be soil for other ideas to inhabit. Where, the Bible says the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. That's how you should be. These ideologies or the belief systems or ways of understanding things should be subject to you, not something to which you are subject. And people think they're in charge. They think they're in control. but they're ideologically possessed, they're methodologically possessed, and they're like, hey, I came up with this. I came up with this system, this ism here.
Yeah.
It's got you. No, it
Right.
inhabited you.
Yes. It so and even in the dialogue, as I was having some problems in church, even the dialogue, it's kind of interesting because I remember years ago battling Calvinistic thoughts while I still held to Calvinistic beliefs. So meaning that I never thought that it should be a subject that people are so possessed by that that's all they talk about, and that they become evangelists for it. And this is while I still had held to the belief of Calvinism, but I just thought there was something wrong with it. And it's so interrupting to our relationships. I mean, we're called to love people.
Yes.
We're called to love, right?
So if you have the relationships is such a good thing, because if you have two people, the thing, there's a betweenness to you, and that's how you get your meaning and your value. Your sense of meaning and value and worth in life comes from the betweenness that you have with other entities, including other people. And when you're ideologically possessed, that betweenness is disrupted by a set of ideas to which you are subject. And so it's no longer you interfacing with your wife. It's this set of beliefs which has its own set of values and morals and ethics that's interfacing with your wife, embodied by you. Or it's like, or you're embodied by it, really.
Right.
And so you can't have good relationships, good connections with people as long as you are ideologically possessed. You can only be an ambassador in the name of the ideology.
Right. Exactly.
There's no you there. No matter how nice of a guy they are either.
Well, it's the funniest thing if we have charismatic leanings, and of course and be fair to everybody here, right? There's going to be total variation. Like there's not just one it's not any of them aren't homogeneous groups, right? They have different variations of beliefs. But let's say a guy is strong that unless you speak in tongues, that you really you don't have the Holy Spirit. And so he would and we would say, well, and so in a sense he's like, hey, I love you, but there's a barrier because the belief that somehow you just don't quite get it, you know.
You don't
and
have
then on the other
Spirit,
side of it, on the other side of that argument, there's the guy that a cessationist that says there's no gifts for today. They really can't back that. Somebody told them that. It's really hard theology to back up, but well, I love this guy, but in your heart you're thinking it's kind of a second-class citizen. So we, you know what I mean? We don't say that. We'd never say it, right?
Right.
But we do that. We just by what we do in our hearts, and so as I look back through my belief system, okay, and I just did this because I'm preparing it for a message. I'm thinking, okay, I got saved, I met these people, and I gathered this information, and this is what I believe. I'm looking at that. A lot of those belief systems were simply accepted because I trusted the people that I was with.
Yep,
that's it.
That's right.
And so, okay, so for, if I take one of these theologies, I'll say we raise up pastors from within. We don't do it in Bible college. I think you can make a biblical case for that, but when all of a sudden you become possessed by it, like you become proud about that. Oh, you went to Bible college? You know what I mean? And pride enters in with so much of these belief systems that we're possessed by, pride becomes so central. And that is really what I want to move away from,
Yeah, you're putting these thoughts in my head. It's almost like going to Bible college is something that locks people into a way of thinking and gets them captive to it in a way that they will never get out. And
Mhm.
so it's not like I see it as a societal. Imagine you see a whole bunch of little people, and you can see from 100,000 feet, and you see a whole bunch of little people or beings or something, or maybe they're AI bots that you created on a machine, and you want them all to go one particular way, but something is interfering with the population there and causing it to be diverted in a way that's not best for them.
Mhm.
And so I see the institutions that we have, when they become ideologically rigid, they start to interfere with mankind as a whole and take us down paths that wind up not being adaptive. So
Mhm.
if my parents are doing things the way they thought they should be done, that they learned about between the 40s and the 80s, and then by the time I become an adult, if I'm doing things the same way and not adjusting to my environment, those those ways of doing things are no longer adaptive in this
Hmm.
environment. And I wind up going off on one of these little side quests or one of these little side vents that's sucking people out and destroying them. And bam, made a mistake here. Bam, made a mistake here. Had the wrong set of values for that decision. Had the wrong set of values for that decision. Now you're paying for that. And now you're paying the price for that. So it's there's a this ideological possession has a huge multi-generational cost with it,
Hmm.
where it produces people who are maladaptive to dynamic environments
Hmm.
and cannot adapt, and then we wind up we we moralistically teach our kids. We think we're moral for teaching them Bible churchy gaudy things when really we're just passing along religious sounding things that we got between the 50s and the 80s,
Yeah.
and they're not from the Bible at all, or we're misinterpreting the Bible. We pass off this set of values to the kids, and it makes them maladaptive rather than adaptive. And nobody's
Right.
got the foresight to see this. And ideological possession is right at the heart of this. I just said a whole bunch of words. And it's hard for me to gather how whether or not people follow on a when
I.
I visualize it, and I don't
Yeah.
know how
Right.
well
Right.
what I'm saying is
Was
matching what I'm visualizing.
I really enjoyed going through my own belief systems from how I was reared because it just felt good to be critical, not critical like negative, because I think our journey is our journey. I think God is going to use our times, even if it's legalistic. Some of your times in the past, I know you wouldn't go back to some things and a church life that you
Right,
were, but
right.
God still used those. He used those. A young friend of mine was talking about just the pain and the suffering and how just urging me to lean into Christ for that. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't order this stuff up. I wouldn't go back to certain thoughts, but also I don't begrudge my journey, and
Right. So there's certain things you have to go through. Like you wouldn't
yes,
want to go back to the second grade right now,
right,
but you needed to go through it, and and
absolutely.
and it's appropriate for you to act like a second grader while you're there to a certain degree.
I partially blame you for having to start over though, because this up, you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, everything that you put stock in, all of your, we talk about systems of theology, whether it's a systematic theology that's in a book like this, right? Or our own systems that we've developed.
I have the props.
Yes, thanks for, this was not done beforehand, folks. um, but then when you don't have those to lean on, right? Once it's very humbling. It's humbling, it's freeing, but I certainly seem to say I don't know a lot more than I used to.
Yes, yes,
You know?
indeed. Right, right. So there's like a deconstruction phase
Yeah.
where you realize that a whole bunch of these facts and figures that you could rattle off, like JD Martin's really good at, he can rattle off some facts and figures.
Oh yeah.
But then you realize that while you were doing that, none of that was knowledge. None of that was real. You were programmed.
So
And so you have to unlearn all that. So you feel like you're becoming a real boy while you're unlearning stuff more so
Right.
than when you're what you previously think of as learning, which isn't learning at all.
Right. So I'll throw this out for your input as like an example theology. And I honestly believe, so don't most people believe that their church has pretty good theology? Maybe the best. Most people probably think.
I would guess
Yeah.
that would be the case. I would guess that they would think that or they wouldn't go there.
Right,
I want to say thanks to Jamie for the super chat,
but
by the way.
What's that?
Anyway, somebody gave a super chat.
Thank you.
So I like to call those people out and say thanks for that.
Awesome.
So if they go to a church, they think their church has pretty good theology, right? I would guess that to be the case.
Yeah. So how many denominations are there? And when you talk of like how many Baptist denominations are there? There's a ton of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. More than I can count.
I don't know.
Thousands, isn't there?
I think a couple thousand. I'm thinking somebody's wrong.
Right. Well, wrong about what though? You see?
Exactly.
So if you take wrong about what? So if you take you get a Calvinist church, somebody leaves Calvinism and they go out and now you say, well, they're no longer ideologically possessed by Calvinism, but they found another ism and they're following the same procedures of claiming that scripture is the authority, all the glory to God. They're using some of the same lingo and they're going through the same, supposedly the same biblical interpretation process, and they're producing a bunch of conclusions to which they are going to assign a label. And all these conclusions supposedly came from a sound hermeneutical process. And then we have a hierarchy by which we operate. We have an establishment by which we operate. All that's exactly the same. Procedurally, it's exactly the same. Procedurally, there was no difference. There was no difference between Calvinism and whatever new ism somebody came out of Calvinism and invented. Mm-hmm. They may not be ideologically possessed by the same thing, but they made a lateral move to a new ideological possession, and they're still methodologically possessed. They still have the same establishment hierarchy. It'd be like Pharisees leaving Phariseeism and starting a new thing, but they're still basically Pharisees, but somewhere else. And maybe they adopt some of the Sadducees' beliefs, but the structure is still the same.
Yeah,
they don't break the structure. So there's a few things going on there. So I feel like I derailed us.
You take it wherever you want to go, Kevin.
So people are in church because they think that the theology is at least okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where are we going from there now?
So here I am, and I'm brought up. I'll use this as an example. So we are an elder rule church. Okay, we believe biblically the elders would make the decisions, right? So there we are. And so I had never really studied congregational rule or really come to the scripture and said, okay, what do you have to say? Now, certainly as God is unfolding some things, I'm saying, I don't have the specific text out. Wow, or here's a part where the congregation sent somebody out. That's interesting. This should go into the
church polity. Yep.
This should go into the discussion. You know, but I wonder, you know, so we naturally defend, like you say, you go from this ism to that ism, and we're defenders, you know, rather than explorers and discoverers, you know, and it just,
Yes, you're defending something, and
we're defenders, right? So I become a defensive person rather than, in a sense, an offensive person. Now, I would say this, and there's probably a lot of ingredients that go into this, but part of it was becoming a little bit more emotionally healthy. Part of it is not having to defend or look or act a certain way. You kind of throwing that away. I find myself connecting, just connecting with God at a much purer level, you know. And then also stepping in, and this has been really, really super encouraging, stepping into the lives of other people. Because I'm not worried about this theology or that theology. Suddenly connecting with God just has made me more filled with compassion, you know?
Yes.
And it's really a lot of, hey, if anyone's looking for something really, really fun to do, witness to people empowered by the Holy Spirit, not because you have to, you know, leave a track at this door, or not because this is part of your theology that you're a witnesser and you're going to do that thing. And usually almost all of us fail at that. But when you do it out of a heart of love, and you don't have, I'm not obligated here to the 4 spiritual laws here in my presentation. Matter of fact, right now, I'm not really thinking about per se the gospel, but then I am. Then you're stepping in and you're loving people and you're caring about them. And that is just so awesome to be there. And all of a sudden, people feel that connection, right?
So, you know, a couple nights ago, my wife and I were sitting across the table from each other, and there were other people in the room. My kids were in the room, things like that. And there was this moment where our eyes caught each other and they locked. And we just had a moment. We had a moment staring at in each other's eyes. That was as rich and powerful and meaningful as any other activity we could possibly do together or any trip we could take. It was all just happened right there in this moment. Now, you can't put a label on that, and you can't put words on that, and you can't describe that.
That's so awesome, Kevin.
But I think people know when that's happening. So when you have this connection with God, and then you start to see people through compassion, you start to see people. You see the person. You don't see them as a second-class citizen because they do or don't align with a particular set of beliefs. You are locked in connection with them, and that capacity for connection takes a front seat over and above any set of propositions you may or may not want to try to convince them of. And that's hard to it's hard to articulate.
It is. It
but
really
you know it
is.
when you're there.
What's that?
But you know it when you're there.
Can I share a little story with you, Kevin, or did you want to take this some?
No, this is I want to hear the story.
On my way home from church Sunday, and I seen somebody that I knew had known one of my kids, and I turned my motorcycle around, I pull into their yard, and the person was cutting their grass, and was like, wow, this is, and I was looking at them, and I came up and just started talking to them, and the smell of weed on the person was just so strong, and I was just, I wasn't rushed, I used to be always so rushed, right? And I was talking to him. He's half my age, right? And just talking to him, he was very different lifestyle, no parents in his life, and very, very difficult lifestyle. And as I was talking to him, and I started to sense that he didn't want me to leave. It was so interesting. We have nothing in common. You know what I mean? And started asking me about my kids, and I was asking him how him and his brother were doing. I know their parents aren't involved in your life. And I said to him, I said, hey, I just live right up the road here. I want you to know you can come up anytime and we'll talk about anything, and it was an inroad, and I don't know how the Lord will use it, but that's how I envision, somebody asked me, what's your vision, or your statement of faith? Is something you have a lot to say about, or stuff like that. The wind blows wherever it pleases. Where it comes from or where it goes, no one knows.
Absolutely.
So it is with somebody born in the Spirit. I don't want to know. I do know I want to spread the love of Christ, but it's not going to be out of, I have to do it because this is part of my belief. It's because God lives in me and his Spirit is flowing through me. And that is a God, that is just, I don't do this perfectly, but it's so much better way to live.
I didn't want you to be done with that.
So I went home and I cried for that kid.
Wow.
He don't have a mom or a dad checking up on him.
Right. It makes you appreciate those who have one.
Yeah. It sure does. And appreciate that we have the opportunity to step into people's lives and just love them.
So when you see people, I used to be taught in the independent Baptist realm, always carry gospel tracts on you, and you basically seeing every person as an opportunity to cram your ideology down their throat. Not how they worded it, it was witness for the Lord.
Right. They had other marketing techniques, right?
Yeah. And now I feel like I have the freedom to just love people as they are. Like I'm genuinely interested in them. I'm not interested in just, so let me do this. Here's something I learned about recently. Something called a wheel of consent. And the 4 quadrants on the wheel of consent are service and allowing, or taking and receiving. And sometimes we act in a way that we think that we are performing a service. Oh, I'm witnessing to this person.
Right.
I am that kind of thing. But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to take from them a claim that I checked a box with God, like a little brownie mark, and now I have done my witnessing for the day. I have witnessed. We're trying to use that person as an opportunity to tick off a box check for ourselves. We're not really being of service.
Mm-hmm.
We're not really giving. We have come in the name of trying to offer something, but really we want to take something. We want to take, we want to be able to claim, we want a notch in our belt. Look,
Yes.
I witnessed to 4 people today. I told
Mhm.
17 people about the gospel today. You don't
Mhm.
care about those people if you're thinking that way.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't think that way if you cared about them.
Right.
You would just care about them.
Yes.
That's hard to get across. I'm curious. So after sabbatical, you came back in July. So you've been
I haven't been back long. I preached twice, and we rotate and stuff, but I've been engaged. I was increasingly engaged, because at first I wasn't going for a while. I was really trying to hide out
Mhm,
and
mhm.
repair.
What's the here's what I want to explore here. Like I want to know the difference between your mindset before you left and now, as far as being a pastor is concerned, and how that is, what's the interaction like with the people, or how much how, I don't know, what's your avenue of approach with what you want to expose the people to while as you're pastoring to them. You're talking to the people from the pulpit and personally. um how's that going? What, are you trying to communicate concepts that are being, are people scratching their heads? Are they receiving them? Or are you not really worried about any particular concepts? How's that going? How's the interaction going now with
Um,
the people?
are you talking from a preaching or from a interpersonal communication?
Like both, from the vision of a pastor. I mean, I'm sure you look out across the congregation, you're like, I want these people to be better in some way as a result of having come here
Yeah.
for a protracted amount of time. So if they come here for a year, they're going to be better. How? And then I'm going to interact with them in a certain way that makes them better, ideally. So as you interact with them, both as a preacher or interpersonal interactions, how's that? How is that? How does that compare now to before?
You know, um, that's a really good question. I haven't been back that long,
Mhm.
but as you say it, I want to ask some people. You know what I mean? Because I want to hear their perspective too. The first 2 messages that I gave when I'm back, and I think messages are a part, but there's so much more, right? So I'll just speak to the messages and then the interaction. Was a woman at the well,
Right,
you
right.
know,
And I
part one
listened
and
to that
two.
one.
What's that?
I think I listened to that one. You sent me a
I
link.
asked you to,
Yep,
which was scary because you're not afraid to criticize. No, I may say it
yep.
positively. You're straight up, and I appreciate that. And you gave me some feedback, which I got some counsel from you when I was off. That was, again, big part of my journey was that. So really, that really is. It was interesting with Jesus, when he came to the woman at the well, and this really struck me, and this I think is really marking, I think, my personal life and my ministry,
Yeah.
but my personal life and my interaction is, I found it so interesting that Jesus did not lead with sin to her. He led with life.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to offer her a drink of living water.
Right. Wow.
And which is interesting. And I think, well, but clearly Jesus was not indoctrinated in the 4 spiritual laws, right? Because he
Yeah.
didn't do a good job of run. I think she was well aware of her sin, her pain, right? So Jesus steps up with life. I also think some of this is some speculation, right? But I also think he sent the disciples to town because it's like, okay, this one's for the big boy. I don't want you guys screwing this up. That's definitely some speculation, right? But I think that's where I want to go with it. Just be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love. I've even been into some, one of the things that you face as pastors, of course, is a lot of confrontations over somebody's not happy about this or that. There's a lot of those types of meetings. I've been fine with those. You know what I mean? Which is weird because those can be really heavy pressure, and the statistics of people stepping out of ministry is staggering, right? All that stuff, right, brother? I know that. But to do that in a different way with love, and also if they do step out or head someplace else, I love you very much. Perhaps you'll find it a better place.
Right.
But no, you're always welcome back.
Yeah.
And that's new. You know what I mean? There's just such competition, it seems, in Christianity, and that's freedom too. So I just think a general, I am going to ask the congregation this. My daughter that was in on she was embarrassed, but she didn't realize. I don't know what happened, but she was in this meeting. She's awesome. My wife is awesome, and I always bounce stuff off of those guys. I get a lot of feedback from them, and other friends. I'll ask them. I've had some friends that have said, "Boy, you're different." I'm like, I haven't spent that much time with you, So we'll see. Did I answer your question though?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's also important to surround yourself with people who will give you the kind of feedback that keeps you sane. And what I mean by that, Jordan Peterson points this out with famous people, like if you're the president of the United States, or if you're the queen, or if you're a famous rock star or a celebrity, an actor, something like that, everyone's always going to want to be kissing up to you. So you may need some constructive criticism, but nobody wants to give it to you because they're too busy kissing up to you. They want you to like them. They don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, I think you need to tuck this in over here and maybe expand out a little more over here. They don't want to be that guy that gives that constructive criticism. So I think it's important as when you're a leader, people are apprehensive about offering. Now, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, genuinely good constructive criticism,
right?
Helpful stuff that kind of keeps you sane, like a fire. Looking at something looking at this sheet of paper that has the word fire on it, like a husband and a wife. They should be contending with each other to a degree. There should be some pushback. Not one person shouldn't just be dictating how things are, and the other person's like, oh, okay. There should be a little tussle there, a little back and forth. Somebody's got to,
Absolutely. That happens. That back and forth happens in my household. I'm real thankful for that. It may appear to others argumentative at times.
Yeah. And there's going to be some things that are going to be argumentative. They may seem that way, but you have to be able to state when you disagree with something or when you don't like something, and bring it up.
And I know I'll speak for myself. I certainly need that, and that's a good test, isn't it, of where our heart is at, and are we available and vulnerable? Are we humble? What does the Lord require of us, right? But to do justice and to walk humbly, and that's good suggestion.
Yeah. It makes me wonder. I don't know where I was going with that thought. It left me. So you've been back in since July. I'm curious. Have you attempted to implement any kind of Ephesians 4:16 edification model?
Since I don't know what that is, the answer would be no.
Okay. Okay. I, I know you've been drinking from the fire hose somewhat. I gave you, like, I sent the Mammon Church video to you. I'd be curious about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Hey, so I wanted to say this. So it's kind of funny. So I just want to share this with you.
yeah.
I gave that to my daughter, who is an avid podcaster, right? And I think she did it out of obedience, but now she's addicted.
Oh wow.
She did it like, but anyways, I jokingly had said when I was listening to man, because it's pretty thick stuff for me. I gotta go through it a couple times. So I told my daughter that I'm going to tell you that when you speak in tongues, you need an interpreter. So
yeah.
no, I'm totally joking. It was good, rich information. Again, I'm some of the concepts that have sunk in slowly has been the ideological possession. That has been huge.
Yeah.
That has been absolutely huge. So a lot of these other things, like when I get online Wednesday with you sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting interaction. Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
It's slower moving, but by
Mm-hmm.
intent. You know what I mean? It's like you're not gonna, okay. You listen to a teaching, the stage is set, the band starts playing, and boom,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting your 3 points. It takes some more patience to listen as there's real interaction
Mm-hmm.
about the word, and some of the guests that you've had on, I've been like, I forget which one, like, whoa, wow, this one's hard to swallow. And it's easier, you know what I mean? And it's easy to, but again, we got to listen, right? We got to listen to them. And you might not buy it. You might not eat the whole thing,
Oh no, yeah.
So I think what I'm seeing, and I say this humbly because of course, I'm a part of a team, right? So I'm going to speak
Mm-hmm.
for myself,
Right.
and I'm going to speak for myself, and I'm also going to be checked by my brothers, right? Because they should be able to, as I should be able to check them, But I think the things that are already coming out, as I said, is this, killing all these preconceived ideas that we have that are not studied out, that are not as a result of being a workman who does not need to be ashamed,
Right.
and that are as a result of what we've been fed. And some of it's true, but it might be true, but there also might be more, or it might not be true.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a better, it might not be exactly true, even if it's not heresy,
Right.
So I think, you asked about the interaction. I think certainly helping to lead people, I'm hopeful to help to lead people down a road of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think I did share from the pulpit was, would you rather be a man or woman of convictions, or a man or woman of discovery or exploration? Not that I'm
Wow.
convictionless, or I would want the congregation to be convictionless, right? But
So it's not necessarily a dichotomy that you're trying to present, more so than a provocation of thought.
Right. That we would be men.
What am I going to optimize for here?
That we would be men and women that would sit in awe at God, that we would sit in awe, that it wouldn't have to line up with what we define for him, that we would sit in awe, and we would just be in love. And that stuff is, you talk about evangelism. When somebody really loves God, I don't know anything, and they love people. I don't know anything more contagious than that. It's so contagious.
So, when I envision myself doing some kind of a in-person on location ministry, I'm kind of overwhelmed with how much a person, in order to transform, they really need to want it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to, like what you just said was contagious. It says it's contagious when you love people and you have compassion. And I think that's wonderful. And that could be part of the answer, but I don't know how to make people want to transform. It's almost like when you tell somebody they're a sinner and they need a savior, they have to realize they need a savior. They have to realize that they need to transform, and they have to want it. And so there's going to be a lot of effort on their part. There's going to be some book reading. There might be some therapy or some counseling. There might be some physical exercise. There might be some breath work. There might be some showing up at a potluck. I don't know. There might be all kinds of things involved in getting this person to train. It might be watching YouTube videos, new podcasts, and I'm mentioning reading again because so much reading, and you are very obviously on a transformation trajectory, but it's also very clear to me that this implosion, explosion type of existence that you were experiencing formed kind of a crisis that in a sense woke you up to a need for something.
Right.
Like I cannot keep going like this anymore. I must change directions. I must do something different from here out. And then you start to transform because you recognize that. I don't know how to get people to there without just waiting for a crisis to show up in their life. And I don't know anything other than crisis. And then for some people, the crisis doesn't wake them up. And then for some people it does, but I think that maybe it doesn't happen at all without crisis of some kind. I don't know. I don't know what it takes. I can just envision a church building full of people, maybe only 3 of whom are really serious about trying to transform. And then what do you do? What do you do with all those other people who are not awake yet and they're going to have to, maybe one of them's child's going to die, maybe one of them's going to get divorced, maybe one of them's going to get fired before they're going to be ready to hear what you're saying. I just don't know what it takes. So it's a little I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but it's something I'm very curious about as how to get people interested in being on a transformation arc, because there's lots of professing Christians who could not care less about it.
Right. Yeah, I feel really blessed in my personal circle. So I'm seeing, and this is kind of interesting in my circle, in our, we're a small little church, 130, 150 people, but I know a fair amount of people that are moving, that are researching and moving beyond just traditional evangelical thought, and which has been super encouraging.
Yeah.
I am not to throw out a Sunday school answer, but but this is certainly a part of me. I do think there's a lot of strongholds, spiritual, demonic strongholds out there. Boy, if there's one thing I do that doesn't notch a belt for me at all, but many, 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 many times during the day, I'm bowing my head. And that might be in my office, that might be at home, maybe in the car, still looking at traffic, but I'm certain God is going to tear down some of those strongholds for us. I believe that. So I see a lot of this stuff going on, and I see a lot of people looking that tired of their belief systems, thinking, I've heard this, tired of their guilt. So I guess, and again, you only see, in a sense, as far as what you see, right? So I'm optimistic
Right.
from my vantage point here. So
It's good that you're optimistic. I don't know if I'm as optimistic.
Well, and probably some iron would sharpen some iron. You know what I mean? Where we would help each other.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? You know
I
how
need
that
a little
is.
dose of that optimism.
What's that?
Yeah, I need a little dose of that optimism. I don't know that I'm necessarily pessimistic, but
Yeah.
I do know people who, in all likelihood, probably don't have that many years left, and there's absolutely no sign of plenty of crises have come their way.
Yeah.
Plenty of opportunities to wake up and grow have come their way,
Yeah.
and they just have not capitalized on them. It hasn't awoken them to any kind of need for transformation to like really do something different, to like really think about what's going on.
Right.
And I don't know what the difference between those kind of people are and people like you who hear the wake up call and respond to it. I don't know. I don't know what the difference between those kind of people is. So
Yeah, and I want to reiterate, my coworkers in the Lord were very patient. They didn't understand what I did, and sometimes I'd battle them, right? Because of how I was, right? But on the back end of it, I'm thankful for that. And I'm hoping we see the type of strongholds demolished that we want.
yeah, well, I mean, when you say strongholds, I think most of the people think thoughts that exalt themselves against the power of God, that kind of thing, and I think some of the strongholds, it's not just people's besetting sin. It's not just that they can't kick smoking or their porn addiction or something like that. I think some of the strongholds are things that we think are good.
Right.
We think they're good, moral, and ethical. And we think that we're more righteous for being a certain way despite being less effective. And that's so when you say strongholds, I think some of those strongholds are, especially within ideological possession. People think that they are more righteous for believing a certain way, whereas they are no help to anybody as far as helping them transform into a wiser person, much less themselves.
That is absolutely a stronghold. And it's an interesting thing that you bring, because I was just thinking of this. What is a stronghold? I certainly think of addiction. They are strongholds. But right away I was thinking about belief systems.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a stronghold. And
they're addicted to certainty and explanatory power.
Yeah. And at the center of that, pride and defense. I also think of strongholds as, and I think this is where the healing, part of a healing that is applicable or needs to be looked at, is generational sin, and generational problems, and you see that so often, things that go, from great grandpa to grandpa, to dad.
What's a couple of examples of that? Generational sins or problems?
I had a neighbor back home. Here's an example, and good friend of mine growing up, right? And her mom just berated her dad, just berated him. I don't know the whole story, but it was not an attractive situation. It was really sad. And I remember my friend just couldn't stand her mom because of that, right? Dad, kind of a gentle guy, tail tucked between the legs. Something was seriously wrong. Big churchgoer too, right?
Yeah.
The gal, And I remember later on in life, she repeated this. Why was that? It's the very thing that she hated, Kevin. She became,
So the daughter wound up doing what the mother was doing?
Yes. Like, holy cows. It was like, you hated that. And now you're doing it. I bet your daughter hates that. You know what I mean? And so there's a generational sin. It could be anger, mindsets. It could be distance, Kevin.
Distance,
where grandpa was super distant. There was he didn't connect on a personal level, so he was distant. And then dad or mom was distant. So now you're distant from your kids. Those are generational sins, and maybe strongholds too. Or I guess that's what I'm describing those at.
Right,
so
right.
That's where I think the generational things are real relevant. Huge topic during my counseling.
I heard a sermon one time about, it's called Breaking the Chain. And it was about generational sins. And it was used the example of Abraham told a half lie about his wife being a sister. Isaac comes along, tells the same kind of lie about his wife being a sister. Jacob and Esau come along and deceive Isaac straight out of whoever gets the birthright blessing. So this problem of lying and deceiving is growing.
Yes.
And then all Jacob's kids conspire together to lie about Joseph being eaten by an animal when they sell him into slavery. And
great example.
So you see this.
Horrible example, right?
So you see this generational sin started off. You see, it's not such a big deal when Abraham's doing it.
Yeah.
Just a little white lie about, his wife being his sister, which is a half truth. And then it grows from there. So this tendency to be willing to tell a lie. And so I think anything else can kind of be like that as well.
Absolutely.
Especially by exposure and seeing it modeled.
Yes.
Whether or not there's a genetic component, like nurture nature kind of thing, versus seeing it modeled and thinking that that's okay. Wow.
And when you get some healing, you can communicate. I have, talked with a lot of my kids about mistakes that I have made in the past. And when you see things, the story's not over, right? We can be chain breakers ourselves and changing the family tree. And,
Right.
I see my daughter fretting over money, and I joke, well, you can thank me for that. I taught you that. And we laugh, and because we're learning, we're healing. I'm looking for my keys. Well, make sure you fret first and then find them, because that's how we do it. So we joke about these things because we're starting to understand, so we still do them. We're certainly not perfect, but it's good to get some healing and to recognize this stuff and get better.
Wow, that's pretty good. I think that's probably a good place to start wrapping things up. Getting healing, not being afraid to get healing, dealing with people out of compassion and love, and not seeing them as second-class citizens because they don't happen to agree with a few propositional conclusions that you were conned into in the first place anyway.
Yeah.
You know. Wow. So tell people where they can find you. I want to tell people this too. If you want to see Brian's sermons church, I put 2 links in the description of this video, and it'll take you to the YouTube channel. Whatever they post videos of sermons, you can see them there, and then you can check out the church website and the town that you're in. Tell everybody if they want to come visit your church, tell them where you are, tell them how to find you online.
Awesome. You want me to share that now?
Yeah, just say it.
So we're in Dubuque, Iowa, and if anybody is in the area, just look us up, Tri-State Community Church. You will find a real friendly group of people. You will find a family.
Yeah.
You know, when I was off for a year, there's a lot of questions over that. Is he coming back? I had that question too. In my heart of heart, I thought I was.
Right.
In my heart of hearts, I couldn't see doing anything else, but I was not judged, you know, and I was upheld, and I'm thankful to my co-leaders for that and our congregation. So, boy, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, Kevin, thank you so much. Thank you for receiving my message and helping me on some of the stuff and open me up to some new ideas. I'm pretty new in your school, but we got a few people that I told you, my daughter already said this is my new podcast. So another of her friend, wow, I listened to this Mammon Church and it's awesome. I'm like, cool, wow, you can help me understand it better. So we'll work together on this stuff.
No, that's
okay,
great.
Kevin.
We'll have to do this again soon.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate
Brian.
Your time. Okay.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yep. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.